You are listening to the American Society of Concrete Contractors. A special thank you to the ASCC leadership team and ASCC members for providing this opportunity for some great industry discussion. We're covering a few topics today, from sustainability to proper design and beyond. This is episode 2, Concrete Takes On Asphalt. We have with us Michael Hoeft with K&M Concrete Construction. Michael has spent 40 years in the industry, 32 years with a major retailer in property and building development, and prior to that, he owned and operated a concrete construction company. We also have with us Ray Merlo of Merlo Construction. Ray grew up working as a concrete finisher, and after college worked for an industrial painting contractor who mentored him on how to grow a business. Ray co-founded Merlo Construction in 1991, where he focuses on concrete flat work, but has also diversified to handle earthwork and underground utilities. Ray has been involved in the American Society of Concrete Contractors for 20 years and has served on the board of directors and finance committee and currently chairs the concrete paving committee.
So one of the things that I kind of wanted to lead off with was how the asphalt industry has outmarketed us historically, to the point where basically today 4% of our roadways and about 8% of our commercial parking lots are concrete pavements. So until about 20 years ago, this market was really largely ignored by our industry, and most certainly from a marketing perspective.
Obviously, that is driven a lot by the design engineers in the industry that turn into a rubber stamp or status quo type situation, slash path of least resistance when they design a typical project. One thing I learned a few years ago, I can't take credit for it, but I can't say where it came from, but there's the immediate thought process of the end user or customer is that concrete is more expensive than asphalt. That's just automatic. So someone coached me up and they said, why don't you start your conversation that, quote, if concrete and asphalt were the same price, which would you choose? And that spurs someone's attention in itself right there. And that's what I did when we flipped. My brother Perry and I did our first FedEx distribution center down in Toledo, Ohio, as a matter of fact. And that's how I had to convince or start the conversation with the developer that if they were the same price, which you should choose, because even though we don't share the part of the market that you're talking about, most people feel it is a Cadillac product. And that's what we have to, that's what we're challenged with, to remind them it's a Cadillac project and people buy Cadillacs for a reason.
We often talk about a lot of things only in the context of what we perceive or what the difference is between initial cost without considering anything beyond that.
But one thing I'd like to talk about in terms is, the immediate gain is the legacy cost of the pavement system. So an asphalt system that you continually pay for if, in fact, you do maintain it properly, which in most cases they don't. But if you do, there's that legacy cost. But I think we also need to remind owners of the disruption of their facility that repaving of asphalt causes. So not only is it a financial burden from the standpoint of maintenance and repaving, but it causes a disruption to the flow of a facility, and that impacts profitability too.
Coming out of the property management side and development side of a retailer, today most retailers are subject to almost a continuous stream of special events that are solely designed to increase daily traffic count, footsteps in the store. So those business disruptions are real, but they're not often considered when we start to talk about cost. We so often get caught up when we start talking about legacy costs in return on investment. And the flaw that I found on return on investment is we never, as a contractor, we never really know what our clients' expectations are for return on investment, what their hurdle rates are internally. And, we like to simplify it and put a return on investment out there at 7 or 8% interest. And we know that most businesses value their money probably more in that 15 to 20% range. So return on investment, if it gets past a year or two, simply on financials, their eyes glaze over pretty quick if it's not in 12 to 18 months. But when you can talk about some of the other tangibles like business interruption, the general liability exposure you have during those interruptions where you have construction equipment operating, you have maybe seal coats going down that you have exposure to people stepping in, slipping in, tracking it into the buildings and on carpets, and those happen fairly routinely if you're going to manage an asphalt parking lot. Seal coating is an event that you'll experience every 2 to 3 years. Joint sealing is usually on about that same cycle every 2 to 3 years. And then you have usually an overlay at 10 or 12 years. So in the concrete side of the business, we like to talk 20, 25 years, where basically when we come in and provide a well-structured concrete parking lot, we essentially don't plan to revisit that for 20 to 25 years.
I'd like to tell contractors and design engineers that want to use concrete, don't get frustrated. Because even though we're big proponents of concrete, you're not going to sell everybody. And fact of the matter is we don't need to sell everybody. We just need to sell a fragment of the industry that will still skyrocket our volume. And that comes and where to focus our attention, I guess, our marketing attention and things of that nature, is getting to know what those client needs are. And that makes it a much easier sell if we know, because some of these guys with triple net leases and things of that nature where they're these landlords that are passing off the maintenance cost onto the tenant, they really don't care. I mean, those are going to be a hard sell. But let's focus on the guys that are hanging on to their properties and things of that nature, and there's a huge segment there.
It's important that we educate them that if they are participating in a triple net situation and those costs are passing through to them, how important those legacy costs become. Because if you're either responsible through a triple net or in a common area maintenance agreement, say in a mall situation, those all come back and they're expensed right to the bottom line. So they do become significant, they do become important, and I think it's most important that we educate the owners or tenants in this case to ask that of their designers. Why aren't you bringing a concrete solution to me for consideration? Because ultimately, again, I think the designer is a poor choice to make the decision on how valuable your money is. I'm going to go to the step away from retail and go to intermodal. We're in a cross-dock warehouse where you have hundreds of trucks in any given day, both inbound and outbound, and how important that is and how you're going to manage those business interruptions with that kind of traffic volume. I know our company, we're focusing on retail and intermodal as our primary market sectors to target, and those are the reasons why.
Well, on the retail side, I could sure see motivation to get away from the asphalt too, with just the mere, if in fact they are tenants or the landlords or someone is maintaining their asphalt properly and they're coating the parking lot when they're supposed to, they're getting a lot of, tar-based, oil, petroleum-based products drug into their building. I know we've done a couple of funeral homes because these particular funeral homes, they of course want a good image when you pull into the parking lot, and so they seal coat regularly, and it just totally destroyed their carpet every time they did. So not only did they have the cost of the seal coat, but then they had a cost of the recarpeting the building. So those products that you use to seal coat are volatile. And since we're on that subject, we can talk about that too, about that environmental impact of these seal coat products in runoff on these properties that are closely adjacent to greenbelt areas and wetland areas and things like that. They have an impact. They have a negative, these runoffs have a negative impact on those non-paved surfaces. And you can imagine how that's frowned upon by the DEQ and the DNR in this day and age. But you talk about the work involved, life cycle of concrete, whatever that might be, 30 years or something untouched, but you get these repetitive repairs and maintenance of asphalt, and look at the impact with fossil fuels and things of that nature. Trucking is involved. We talk about trucks being on the road. We talk about the diesel fuel that they're burning and the sustainability of those vehicles that are doing this work to get 2 miles per gallon, and the impact on the environment it has to maintain those pavement systems. Also, I think have to be taken into consideration if someone wants to have a property that's, as close to sustainable as possible.
And one of the most recent things that I ran across as I wound up my career in the building and facility management was the recent advent of LED lighting moving into parking lot and street lighting, and how well it reacts with concrete versus asphalt. Concrete, right now, there's several studies out that show concrete having the ability to increase reflectivity up to 30%, and as a result of that, reduce wattage on fixtures and reduce fixture count and pole count by approximately 30%. So, as you're able to educate owners on all of those considerations, the gap that we perceive between the initial cost of concrete versus asphalt, which is narrowing, has narrowed significantly, I think, right in the last 3 to 5 years, really becomes quite cost competitive when you can educate your owner to take everything into consideration.
It all starts with one thing, the design. Because when I even went to flip my very first FedEx project from asphalt to concrete, not counting the truck dock paving, of course, which was originally designed as concrete, the first thing the owner, the tenant, and the design engineer said, okay, the design calls on this site to use 6 inches of asphalt over 18 inches of base, and where it's concrete, it says use 9 inches of concrete. So if you want to pave the asphalt areas, revert to the 9 inches of concrete. Well, everybody knows that 9 inches of concrete is not necessary to replace 6 inches of asphalt. So there begins the discussion of proper design.
Right. And I think, ACI 330, which is the guideline that's put out by American Concrete Institute, has been a big help in providing that guideline. Gives very specific information from beginning to end on on what's required. And our MCA has done a good job putting together their design assistance program, which again allows them to utilize site-specific project inputs and allows them to produce basically deliver an engineered design at the end of that process. So it's really, what I see, Ray, is our challenge is to really educate both the client and the design community. I found that it's easier so far to educate the client and let him ask for that solution from his design firm, because ultimately the design firm will they'll deliver whatever the client's asking for.
Where you as a contractor have ulterior motive, work.
Right.
But
Right.
where the owner, he doesn't have an ulterior motive, he's just looking for the best bang for his buck. I'll put in a little plug for that NRMCA's Design Assistance Program, because as a contractor and a non-engineer, such as myself, they do make it a very seamless process. All I do is send the drawings into their DAT program, that include the section, the pavement section, the proposed asphalt pavement section, and soil borings, of course, if they're available at the time, and they turn over the design alternate to that. And the aforementioned project where there was 9 inches of concrete in the loading dock areas and 6 inches of asphalt pavement, I got the asphalt, or the concrete, I should say, skinny down to 6.5 inches, which now all of a sudden made us extremely competitive with the asphalt, because we were only required half the ag sub base also. So they skinnied the pavement down from a 22-inch system down to 14.5-inch system.
Right. So one of the strategies we've been using is to bring our own engineering team to the project. Particularly if we have an engineering firm that is clearly uncomfortable with designing a competitive concrete pavement design. We've built some alliances with a couple of engineering firms that are very good at designing both concrete and asphalt designs. So we are offering that now as more and more as an option to let us bring our design to the table and become the engineer of record for the parking lot. And, they'll design it and collaborate with you, and hopefully it'll be not only bring a good design forward for the owner, but hopefully in the process, the collaboration and training will be better received from a peer than from a contractor.
That's interesting, Mike. You guys are getting in the cutting edge of the design side of it, because there are some exciting things happening in our industry as they evolve too, especially with these with different types of fibers, and as the pavement systems can go more and more towards the jointless, potentially a jointless system to save costs and maintenance costs and things like that. All come to light if you can get in early enough on the design side of it,
Right.
for sure.
And that's really the biggest challenge today, is to be able to stay far enough ahead of the projects to get involved early, and to have a client that will allow you to be involved early. Or at least what we're hoping for is that at some point in time, we will win the respect of the design community in our local market area, at least, that they will include us on projects of magnitude that we're looking at.
Yep.
And, let us provide some of that guidance to them.
We sure don't want to discourage, though, some of the smaller contractors from taking advantage of that DAP program. And you don't have to be out in front if you don't have, the resources that some companies do or contractors do to chase that. I mean, that's great. There's a lot of guys, a lot of contractors out there that are paving the way, no pun intended, for everybody to be able to participate in this. And we talk a lot about these concrete distribution centers and things of that nature where you have hundreds of thousands of square feet of paving, but at the end of the day, there's 150,000 square foot jobs for every one of those. And those are excellent opportunities for all contractors and all producers to take advantage of.
Right.
The industry that we're in as a whole, both the contractor side and the producer side, need to take advantage right now of the advancement in concrete placement technology that has been evolving over the last, 10, 15 years now, that's really reduced the labor cost of placing concrete more in line with asphalt. And even when I talk to these ready-mix producers, we wouldn't even be having this conversation today if not for the invention of laser screeds and GPS-guided preparation equipment and things of that nature that you don't have to be a large concrete contractor to take advantage of. If we didn't have those, we wouldn't even, those labor-saving techniques, we wouldn't even be having the discussion to compete with asphalt. So I think as an industry as a whole, we need to take advantage of the fact that technology is helping our industry much faster than it's helping the asphalt industry.
Right. Yeah, I think as far as overall quality, we actually, we can plot a parking lot today, we can plot an entire parking lot and upload that information at the grading level when we're grading. We can grade the sub-bases or the base materials now to almost eliminate any overrun on yield. We always, as an industry, 10 to 12% was probably always a pretty standard norm for overrun on concrete cross-section and concrete yield. And today you can, obviously now the goal is to bring that to zero because it's 100% profitability in that margin. And we're able to do that today. We can bring that pretty consistently, we can bring that down, easily cut it in half. And with a little bit of attention and a little bit of diligence, you can literally bring that to a zero. You can literally zero that out. And then on the other side is you can produce grades, for drainage and overall flatness and levelness that we've never been able to produce before either, cost effectively. Our biggest personal success has been in flipping, what we call flipping asphalt to concrete. And we had a great year this year. We were able to work with a large regional retailer this year, and we're able to flip about 500,000 square feet of their paving.
We've talked about getting out correct information, marketing to customers, and starting with good designs. But what about the more internal issue of attracting people to work for you?
I think in the regard, in two things in that. Number one, back to what Mike said about the quality. So you talk about the guys, we might talk a little bit about ACI finishers and things like that getting your concrete finishers to get their ACI certification and things of that nature that would help with some quality concerns and things of that. So there's that side of the labor to talk about. And the other side of the labor is how do you attract young people to this industry, or young people and old people alike. And maybe some of the ways are with the technology. I mean, it's still back-breaking work and it's still labor work, but it's not your father's concrete company anymore. In some regards. And we talk a lot about it in our think tanks about construction as a first choice for these young men. Not, well, little Johnny, his future's not too bright, but there's always construction. We gotta get that on the forefront. And the other day I went to a fundraiser for a college in our community, and I was sitting there and at the dinner, and up on the big screen, they were interviewing students around campus that week, and one of the kids had the microphone. He said, "If not for this college, I'd still be doing construction work." I almost spit my soup out, that I just funded this event. And he goes and says that. I thought it was pretty ironic. There are some contractors, even in our association, that are taking training to a new level. And they understand that that's their future.
Yeah, I think the real challenge we face in the labor market today is the velocity of motivating and training people to come into the trades. We reinvest quite significantly. I have a national consultant that, in fact, today they're in North Dakota with my flat work team, certifying additional ACI finishers, and basically just running a learning laboratory. We have a small warehouse floor we're placing up there today, and it's just come up and work with my guys, and watch what we're doing, and then do a postmortem and tell us what we can do better and produce a better quality product at the end. The other thing that we're focusing on right now is we have a program that involves several school districts in the state of Minnesota. It's called LIFT, and it's a program that's working not only with high school students, but also with, I'm going to say, unconventional adults that maybe have moved here, that are maybe immigrants, or maybe been sourced out of their previous occupation. And I think today there's more opportunity in the trades than there's probably ever been, and certainly within my lifetime. Where we are, compensation is much better than it used to be. Top talent, top field talent in our industry today easily crosses the six-figure mark.
And we have to do a good job of presenting that opportunity to these young guys. I'm in a business peer group in Detroit, and one of the members happens to be in the manufacturing industry. And he said, "Ray, in our business, a guy comes in manufacturing, he comes in on the line, and guess what? He stays on the line. You've got guys that came into your company as a laborer, that became a concrete finisher, that became a laser screed operator, that became a foreman, that became a superintendent, and potentially a project manager." Mm-hmm. So he said, that's what you have to sell. You have to sell that opportunity of advancement in your industry at no matter what level you come in.
We've covered a lot of ground. Thank you, Mike and Ray, for your thoughts on these various topics.
I'd just like to thank ASCC and for the opportunity to do this series and invest in the paving committee, and thank Ray for his leadership as our chairman this year.
If not for the ASCC, I wouldn't meet people like Mike, who have such a big influence on my career. Another reason to be thankful for our association. And it's just like anything else. It's you get out of it what you put into it. Actually, you get more out of it than you put into it. But just put in something, and you'll get it back in spades.